Carl Voss, I would say, was a Renaissance man, really before his time, a man of vision.
Isn't it incredible that he won the Grey Cup with the tricolor, Queen's football, and then went on to also win the Stanley Cup?
Carl Voss, of course, is one of only two people to be a member of both the Football and Hockey Halls of Fame.
Carl has a resume that not many people can match, that's for sure. He played in a Memorial Cup, won a Grey Cup, scored a Stanley Cup winning goal. Very few ever rise to those kind of achievements that he accomplished during his distinguished career.
The Grey Cup shows the superiority of football in Canada. It's a significant trophy because of its longevity.
It's deeply ingrained in our history as a nation, and for good reason. Family members, friends, people you're connected to, just Canadian athletic legends and Americans who have come up and played in the game.
The way I look at it, it's a Canadian sport icon, right? There's the Grey Cup and there's the Stanley Cup, and people all around the country identify with those two trophies that have been two of the oldest trophies in North America. So there's a real emotion for sure because of the iconic nature of the trophy.
The Stanley Cup had a head start on the Grey Cup. Lord Stanley was Governor General of Canada, lived in Montreal, and really fell in love with the game of hockey.
First awarded in the 1890s, donated by Lord Stanley himself. For many years, it was an amateur trophy where amateur teams would compete to win the Stanley Cup. Queen's University actually played 3 times for the Cup. They never won, unlike their football team who won 3 Grey Cups.
You could not be a team that was not very good and challenge for the Stanley Cup. You actually had to accomplish something in your region, in your division. And the famous story of the team from the Yukon coming to play Ottawa, and they went by train and dog sled and walked.
But in 1917, when the National Hockey League was formed, they took sole possession of the Stanley Cup. So you had to be a professional National Hockey League team to win it. The trophy itself is the best known, most recognizable trophy in the world.
I would argue that the Grey Cup has been a bit more of a unifier than the Stanley Cup because the Stanley Cup's an international trophy now and is something that people around the world recognize, where the Grey Cup is strictly Canadian.
People know the Stanley Cup, and anytime it's brought out, it instantly attracts a crowd. It really is something that's unique to sports and certainly the most treasured trophy in all of sports.
Carl Voss, somebody that came to Queens really primarily as a hockey player, but was also a great football player. He was a halfback with the team in 24 that beat Bommy Beach to win the Grey Cup. Today, I think it takes incredible focus because there's a lot going against somebody that wants to be a two-sport athlete. Back in the 20s, it was not uncommon for people to be dual-sport athletes, even some players to play 3 sports.
That was normal. I think for the best athletes, they played as many sports as they possibly could, and I think that's just the way it was. Jackie Robinson in the US was the same way. He lettered at 4 sports at UCLA. He was a track star, football, baseball, and basketball. He played all the sports.
Most young men were dual sport athletes, but very few of them excelled at it.
Anytime you can leave a legacy and reach the pinnacle in one sport, it's a pretty special accomplishment. A lot of what comes with leaving a legacy is winning a championship and being a part of a championship team. To be able to dip into 2 sports and have that type of success truly is incredible and certainly should be commended.
Carl was born in Massachusetts. His family actually moved to Toronto in his early teens, and he was a star in Toronto. Back in those days, many kids played 3 sports, and he certainly was one of them. He played hockey, he played baseball, and he played football. He wound up coming to Queen's University as an 18-year-old, which was in the fall of 1924, and he was joining a football team that was a pretty stacked team.
24, he was young, right? He was new, so he didn't have a big role to play.
He was a really good athlete. The issue for him is that team was so stacked. They had so much talent on the Queen's team that he didn't get a chance to get on the field very much at all. On all accounts, he was a really good athlete and could have contributed if he was at a different university or a different team, for instance. So I think it was maybe good luck for him to be on that team and be able to have his name on Grey Cup as well as the Stanley Cup.
Queens had already won 2 consecutive Grey Cups, and of course his year here, his first year, they won a 3rd Grey Cup, which was his first year in Kingston. He also played hockey, which was pretty much probably the main reason why he came here, really. He was a 2-sport athlete, but a better hockey player than he was a football player. Wound up playing for Queens on the varsity team, also spent some time with the Kingston Junior Frontenac's team. In 1926, they went to the Memorial Cup. It's the one and only Kingston team to do that. It was a team called the Combines because they had players from Queens, they had players from the Junior Frontenacs, and they had players from the Royal Military College. Kingston wound up losing to a team from Calgary 3-2 in that championship game. He finished up his time in Kingston in 1926 with that trip to the Memorial Cup, and the following season he was signed by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
It was a team that I think it was 1926-27, started as the Toronto St. Pats. Conn Smythe and a group came along and they bought the team for about $160,000, which even in today's money is not a lot of money when you consider what the Leafs are worth now.
And Carl Voss was actually the first player to sign a professional contract to be added to that team. Of course, the existing players from the St. Pats were already there. He didn't play much, though, for the Maple Leafs. Over a couple seasons, he played a handful of games. He wound up ultimately going to the minor leagues. It's also interesting, his first full season in the National Hockey League, which was 1932-33, he signed with the Rangers. He played 10 games with the Rangers, and they wound up trading him to Detroit. So not only was he the first NHL player to win the Rookie of the Year award, he's also the first and I believe the only player that actually played for 2 different teams doing it. So it's kind of an interesting twist to that story.
He capped it off with the Stanley Cup in 37-38 with the Chicago Blackhawks, a team that was a pretty average team that went on an incredible run in the playoffs.
Again, he joined the team partway through the year. He wound up having a great playoff run with Chicago. It was an upset that year because that was back in the 6-team league. Chicago had finished 3rd that season, and they wound up actually beating Toronto in the Stanley Cup final. The Leafs, of course, had wound up in first place that year. But he scored the Stanley Cup winning goal. In fact, that would turn out to be the final game that he played in the NHL. He went to training camp that fall.
He had a knee injury that ended his playing career prematurely. Spent 15 years as a supervisor of officials for the NHL.
And that's really where he did, I think, his greatest work in terms of his contribution to the sport. And ultimately, when he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, which was in 1974, it was as a result of what he had done on the officiating side and not what he did as a player, even though he had a pretty strong resume as a player as well.
Well, it's just an incredible feat. And again, you have to be in the right place at the right time, but still you have to be good to be lucky.
He seemed to be a player that kind of rose to the occasion. He took advantage of the opportunities that he was offered, and he made the most of every chance he got.
It never will be done again to win a Grey Cup and a Stanley Cup because the seasons overlap. Just the significance of it would be, I think, something that he wore as a badge of honor for the rest of his life, that his name was on both trophies, and somebody that always made the best of a good opportunity.